Hello folks, I'm Doc Sanders. Recently, the UN's Food Agriculture Organization projected this planet will have a 2 billion increase in the population, up to 9 billion by 2050. These experts predict we will need a 70% increase in the world's food supply to feed the population. In addition, recent research at 12 schools in Kenya demonstrated that including meat in the diet of these children increased their cognitive skills by 20 points on IQ tests over children on vegetarian diets. There were several other benefits from the meat diets that included increased muscle mass, motor skills, and physical activity. Kind of makes Baltimore's school board policy of having meatless Mondays for children look kind of foolish, doesn't it? In a classic us versus them conflict, the future of food animal agriculture is now at stake. The battle lines have formed between the food animal production interests and the vegetarians/animal welfareists. These battles are being fought in Ohio, California, Michigan, and a number of other states. However, I believe that in the interest of all of us, and by us I mean all of us, and them together, we need to have a productive, civil, over-the-fence talk about confinement livestock housing so we can achieve a balance between the interests of animal welfare and the interests of maintaining profitable, efficient agricultural practices that supply a growing world population with wholesome, affordable food. Livestock farmers are some of the most productive people I know. Many American manufacturers would go bankrupt if they had to operate on the margins and with the adversity that livestock farmers routinely must address. Over the years, farmers have adopted state-of-the-art technologies, such as confinement housing, that have helped them boost production and operate more efficiently. While confinement housing helps them turn a profit, these farmers have found it offers some added benefits as well. For instance, it requires less land space, so it's good for the environment. It helps prevent livestock attacks by predators. It prevents cannibalism. It reduces the risk of piglets being crushed. It minimizes sows fighting, and it stops embryonic losses in a sow's early pregnancy. It's good for animals and productivity all at once. Ethicists, on the other hand, argue that animals are a part of God's creation and weren't put on earth to be restricted to a small space. They believe that animals should be able to turn around, spread their wings, graze in a pasture, or wallow and scratch for bugs. It has become an interesting problem. As ethicist Wes Jameson has commented, activists demonstrate to free chickens from battery cages, while many individuals have cockatoos, parrots, and canaries parked in cages at home. Free the hens, but you never hear anyone demonstrate to free the cockatoos. Consumers tossed into the middle of the debate between food animal agriculture and the activists are concerned about the cost of food. They're working hard to put food on the table, especially single parents, and want to get as good a bargain as they can for eggs, milk, and meat. Ironically, many of these same consumers who are not well informed about how their food gets to the supermarket will unblinkingly vote for a referendum supporting animal welfare. Little do they know, these issues add significant cost to the production of eggs, milk, and meat. After a guilt trip about eating chicken, steak, or pork chops, they send in another $25 to the high-profile activist group to salve their conscience. As soon as the contribution has been made, they are relieved of guilt so they can order burgers for the family on the next foray out. One of the leading activist groups, the Humane Society of the United States, which advocates improved animal welfare in agriculture, does not maintain animal shelters for abandoned animals, as many people believe. Local humane associations do that. Currently, over a fourth of their multi-million-dollar budget is spent on litigation and a little over 5% on animal care, shelters, and welfare. These dedicated activists have also performed a service to society by exposing abuses in the nation's food animal supply chain, but have been accused of withholding video evidence of animal abuse from authorities until the timing was right to further their agenda. Since the 90s, these activist groups have had an underlying mission to convert the U.S. into a vegetarian society by pecking away at food animal agriculture until it becomes unprofitable. California's successful ballot referendum that in essence banned certain types of livestock confinement housing has turned the whole California poultry industry upside down. It has had little effect on the swine industry, as California had virtually no confinement swine housing to begin with. While the referendum effectively banned confinement housing by decreeing every animal should be able to turn around or spread its wings without touching the sides, the referendum offered no clear language as to what would be an acceptable substitute. The result is total confusion in the California poultry industry. Producers can't afford to invest millions in new facilities, especially when they're uncertain whether they'll be deemed compliant. Food animal agriculture insists that animals housed in confinement don't have elevated serum cortisol, a marker for stress. The researchers conclude that the animals are treated well. Here are some more facts. Animals reproduce far more efficiently in confinement systems. Confinement housing reduces cannibalistic behavior, a very real problem in free-range conditions. Confinement housing reduces the chance for fights between sows, which often lead to serious wounds. A few months ago, Michigan legislative groups wrote the policy for animal confinement standards without the input of the humane activist groups in Michigan and other interested parties. Because of the deep-running feelings, progress was stopped until the parties were able to compromise on the policy standards. It was constructive, especially by avoiding the contentious debate like the one in California. The jury is still out whether Ohio's efforts, in spite of a ballot initiative, can avoid the California pratfalls. A little over a year ago, I testified as an expert in a blatant animal abuse case involving a large swine operation. An individual with credentials in major agricultural organizations condemned my testimony, reportedly saying, "We take care of our own problems internally without airing our dirty laundry." Too often, this has been the philosophy of some key agricultural leaders. As long as this is their way of thinking, choosing to be on the defensive and churlish with human activist groups, agriculture will continue to be targeted by activists. It's time to cut the BS. So long as activist groups are the enemy, the debate will be long and expensive. When activists win another round, many farmers will be unable to afford the cost of change and go out of business. No longer is it enough to defend food animal agriculture with science only. Certainly, science does support modern agricultural practices. However, the ethics of food animal production must be addressed so we can construct standards that America's farmers can live and thrive with, while addressing concerns of activist groups. So long as food animal agriculture continues to be bombarded with inane requirements, the American farmer's ability to feed a growing, hungry world will erode. Likewise, so long as food animal agriculture continues to hide its head in the sand, animal welfare activists will continue to raise public concern that agricultural practices are bad for animals. Continuing at loggerheads isn't going to work. It's just going to cost a lot of money, risking the livelihood of farmers and raising the cost of living for consumers. I'm Doc Sanders, and we'll see you down the road.
Down the Road is brought to you in part by Prince Agra, makers of Omnigen AF, advancing animal nutrition for healthy animals, and Woodruff Enterprise of Springfield, Ohio.